With Father's Day fast approaching, I'm gonna give you guys 10 personalized DIY gifts that you can make with your 3D printer, laser engraver, or UV ink printer. And keep in mind that these ideas do not necessarily have to be for Father's Day specifically. They'll make great gifts for any guy, for any occasion, and of course, you can always put your own creative spin on them. Now for the 3D printing, I'll be using the Creality K2+. For the laser engraving, I'll be using the xTool F1 Ultra. And for the UV printing, I'll be using the brand new EufyMake E1. And I'll be doing a quick walkthrough of each of these projects. But if you guys are looking for more details on how to use these machines, I've got a lot of great in-depth videos on my channel. So go check those out where I get into the very fine details of all of these kinds of projects. And if you guys don't yet own any of these machines, but you're in the market, use the links in the video description down below to help support this channel. It really goes a long way. Let's get started. Guys have been decorating their personal spaces like shops and garages with these very cool metal signs for quite some time now. And if you've got one of these new EufyMake UV ink printers, you can make your own custom metal signs for yourself or as a gift. And right now, I'll quickly walk you guys through a project making just a very simple rectangular metal sign. Now, conceivably, if you had a piece of metal that was a different shape, you could create a graphic that matches that shape and make any sort of sign that you want. Perhaps something even like one of those old vintage automotive style signs. But for this example, we're going to be using this NASA themed graphic. In the EufyMake Studio desktop software, all you need to do is import your graphic and resize it to fit on top of your workpiece. So in this case, in the software, the machine took a snapshot picture of that rectangular blank metal sign, and I've taken my rectangular graphic, matched it to the top of that sign, selected my ink settings. So in this case, it's just a white CMYK ink mode, and we're going to hit print. And these full color 12-inch by 16-inch metal signs take about 20 minutes each to produce. The machine cures that UV ink onto the metal surface. It sticks really well and is very durable. The colors come out really vibrant, and because you can obviously print any kind of design that you want, you can custom tailor a gift like this for any guy that you know. And if you haven't seen this printer before, I've got a full-length video just about the EufyMake E1 on my channel. You guys can go check that out. Now, these are printed in flat ink mode, but you can also do textured ink where it builds up the ink to produce a sort of textured surface. A few moments ago, I suggested that you could also potentially do some of those vintage metal signs. And one thing I want to experiment with in the future is printing one of those signs with the patina of a vintage sign printed right on there, so it looks like it's been aged. I think that could be a really cool gift for a guy that's into classic cars or other vintage themed items. Next up, we got custom phone cases, and you'd be hard pressed to find anyone these days without a cell phone. So these blank cases right here that I'm gonna be demonstrating with are from EufyMake, and they're for the iPhone 16. But essentially, you could take any blank cell phone case and you could print right on it with one of these UV ink printers. Even if the case is not clear and it's already got a graphic on it, you could print right on top of that. The only catch is that, as far as I can tell, this printer will not print on top of silicone. So the case should just be some kind of plastic for the ink to stick. And all you need to do is put that case inside of the printer and stick it to the adhesive mat. So for this example, I'm using the foam that actually came inside of the case, sticking that down on the mat, putting the case on top of that, and then blocking it from left to right with a little bit more foam. That's going to prevent this case from moving around during the printing process, so we get a crisp result. And inside of the desktop EufyMake Studio software, it's very easy to get this thing set up. Very similar to what we just did with the metal sign. I'm going to import my graphic and I'm going to resize it to fit on top of the phone case. Within the software, you can temporarily make your graphic transparent so you can see right through it, and this gives you a better idea of where you're positioning it on top of your workpiece. And then once you're happy with the position, you can bring that opacity back to 100%. Within the software, you could generate some custom text using the text tool, and you could put somebody's name on the case if you wanted to personalize it that way. In this example, I'm just going to take an SVG vector graphic of the Corvette logo, because of course the background picture is a Corvette, and I'll resize that and place it somewhere on the phone case. I've changed the color to red and then just sent this thing off to the printer to print, and that's how easy it is to make a custom one-off phone case. Depending on the design of the case, they could take anywhere between 4 to 6, 7, or 8 minutes to print. And if you're building up texture on the phone cases, because that's also possible, it will take longer for textured prints. But effectively, you could print any design for anyone and customize it in any which way you want for that special guy that you know. It's truly incredible what you can do with a UV printer in your arsenal of tools. We've done a few example projects using the UV printer, so now we're going to switch things up a little bit and move on to laser engraving some wallets using the xTool F1 Ultra. When using F1 Ultra, you'll see that I have these F1 to F1 Ultra fixture adapters that allow me to use regular size F1 fixtures on the Ultra base plate, and I can put one in the center or create a 2x2 grid pattern for batch processing. I get a lot of questions about these parts, so I figured I would just explain them once ahead of time instead of each and every time I use them. And finally, as with all laser projects, please work safely and use some sort of fume filtration system to protect the air that you breathe. So you probably know a guy who's still carrying around one of those big bulky George Costanza style wallets, and he would really benefit from slimming things down to one of these anodized aluminum card holders that fit perfect in my multi-jig fixture that you can find on my website. So within xTool Creative Space, we can take a snapshot of the F1 Ultra's working space, and you can see the fixture, and now you can also see the wallet. And all the fixtures purchased on my website come with a digital template similar to this one here that will assist you with placing your graphics within the workspace. Now I've got lots of videos on my channel going further in depth on how to use those templates and place your graphics, but for now we're just going to import an image, and I'm going to go ahead and trace this raster image and turn it into a vector image right inside of xTool Creative Space. I'm going to go into the object list and I'm going to delete any elements that I no longer want. So there was a little signature down at the bottom, and I'm going to resize this graphic to fit within the space on the digital template that would hold the wallet. And for these black anodized aluminum wallets, I'm going to go with a power setting of 70%, speed of 1800 millimeters per second, one pass at 300 lines per centimeter. And down in the advanced settings, I'm going to change the engraving angle to 45 degrees and use the crosshatch option. Then we can send this job off to the F1 Ultra and watch as our custom wallet comes to life. Now obviously this is just a very simple graphic, but it would be very suitable for a guy that you know who's into cars. The sky is really the limit here with how you can personalize these wallets for the recipient, and with the xTool F1 Ultra, the results come out looking great. The contrast between the black anodized section and the silver engraved parts look amazing. And these exact same wallets can be printed on using the EufyMake E1 UV ink printer. The only thing I would recommend doing is cleaning off the surface with some isopropyl alcohol if the wallets have previously been handled, as ideally you'd like to eliminate the oils from your hands and fingerprints that are on that surface. And you can see that this one I had actually previously engraved, but I didn't like the design, so we're going to print right on top of that. And I'm taking this exact example from my previous video where I showed you guys in depth on how to use the EufyMake E1, but I thought something like this would also make a great gift for a guy that you know who might be into gaming. So I've gone ahead and found an image online of a classic Game Boy, and it turns out that the Game Boy is roughly the same height to width ratio as these aluminum wallets. It's just slightly different, so I will have to massage the image just a bit by stretching it, but otherwise it fits pretty nice on top of these aluminum wallets without having to distort the image too much. And once I'm happy with the size and position of the image, I can go ahead and start the print. And before that print starts, the EufyMake Studio software also gives you an estimate of the ink volume used for that particular job. And as you would expect from this really amazing machine, the results are spectacular. If you watch the previous two examples, the first one where I did the metal signs and the second where I did the custom phone cases, you'll know that this printer produces very vibrant colors, and the ink will stick to everything from metals, ceramics, plastics, and more. So you could take something like this wallet and you could customize it with a picture of your family if you're doing something for Father's Day, or maybe something like this that might be more in line with his interests and hobbies, or whatever other creative idea you can think of. But whatever it is, the result is certainly going to be very custom, very personal, and most importantly, very durable with that UV ink on a wallet that's going to live inside of his pocket. Next up, we're going to cover custom drink coasters, and this is a great gift idea because you can customize the theme for a guy who enjoys a nice cold beer once in a while or even a hot coffee. And the other cool thing is that we can make these with our UV printer, 3D printer, or even laser engraving. And so we'll start off with the laser engraving example. Using my xTool F1 Ultra fixture adapter, I've got 4 of these circular fixtures set up, and I put 4 blank black acrylic coasters in each one of those fixtures. And for the laser engraving example, I'm going to go with this Star Wars coffee theme coaster set. Within the xTool Creative Space software, it already has presets for specific materials, such as black acrylic. So we can just select that material, and now we've already got preset settings, power, speed, etc. for black acrylic. If you've never used the fiber IR laser on black acrylic with the F1 Ultra, I would highly recommend that you give it a try. The result is a really bright and sharp silvery white graphic that almost looks like it's been screen printed on there. The engraved area also feels interesting to the touch, where it's got a very fine texture and feels slightly raised on top of the smooth black surface. They're very eye-catching, and people will definitely be asking him where he got them from. Now, if you don't have a laser engraver, but you invested into the EufyMake E1, you can also get these ceramic coasters, which we can print directly on top of. For this example, I'll do 2 coasters at a time, so I'll load those into the machine, and then within the EufyMake Studio software, I'll take my round beer-themed graphics and I'll place them on top of the ceramic coasters. Now, the idea here is to mimic the round pub-style beer coasters, but to have them in a much higher quality ceramic material. Now, obviously, I wouldn't recommend trying to sell something like this for obvious reasons of copyright and trademark infringement. But if you're just giving a gift to a friend or family member, you should be safe. These particular coasters are about 90 millimeters in diameter, and to print 2 at a time only takes a couple of minutes. These ceramic coasters have a cork pad adhered to the bottom, so they will not scratch your table. And if you noticed earlier when I was unboxing them, they came in a EufyMake box. And right now, at the time of the making of this video, the EufyMake E1 UV printer is still in the Kickstarter stages, and I was able to get my hands on one as an initial tester. But you can get one too using the links in the video description down below, and obviously as they start to roll out these printers, you're going to find that they'll have official materials that they're going to support, such as those coasters. Now, if you also have a 3D printer, I'll make the design file available for this coaster holder, and I'll put a link to that in the video description down below as well. The coaster holder is a nice touch and a great way to finish off this custom gift. And speaking of 3D printing, we can absolutely make these coasters right from scratch using just our 3D printer. And if you've got a multicolor printer such as the Creality K2 Plus, then we can take a design and we can turn it into a multicolor print. 3D printer slicer software has come a long way over the years, and you're now able to import graphics such as SVG files and incorporate them into your parts. Something like a very simple shape like these cylindrical coasters can be made directly in the slicer. You can actually just create a cylindrical body, you can import your SVG, paint everything right in the slicer, and send it off to your printer to be printed. Technically, you wouldn't even have to touch any sort of third-party 3D CAD modeling software. Now, for this particular design, I didn't make it from scratch, I just downloaded it, but if you're a person looking to make gifts like this, it's absolutely an option where you can find thousands, if not millions of designs at this point for free on websites like Printables, MakerWorld, or Creality Cloud. I'll put links to all of those in the video description down below. Continuing with the theme of 3D printed gifts, we can give the gift of organization with one of these 3D printed Valet trays. Now, this particular one is a free model that I had just downloaded, and I'll put a link to that in the video description down below. But you can very easily customize this Valet tray right in your slicer. You could add some sort of text, perhaps someone's name, the family's surname, or whatever you can think of. Obviously, you can also print it in different colors. So in this particular case, I'm going to print the base in black, and I'm going to use some marble white PLA for these 2 inserts in the Valet tray. The printed tray alone is pretty cool, but I'm going to try and take this project to the next level by including some sort of a soft liner on the bottom. So in this case, I selected some 2mm thick cork material with an adhesive backing. I'm going to be cutting that pattern out on my laser engraver and cutter, in this case, the xTool P2S. Now, the P2S is a CO2 laser and it's pretty expensive, but you could effectively cut this out on the xTool F1 Ultra or the S1, which both have blue lasers, and those would work just fine. Now with the CO2 laser, I didn't quite do enough passes to get completely through the material, so the adhesive backing still had a little bit stuck there, and I just used a hobby knife to cut the remainder of this material out, and then I could peel off the backing and I could adhere it to the plastic tray. And if you're wondering how I got the dimensions for each of these inserts, all I did was use the measure tool right inside of the slicer, and I measured from wall to wall, and the shapes are obviously very simple. Many of them are just squares and rectangles with a radiused corner, and I was able to draw those out within my CAD software and send them off to my laser cutter. And this small modification gives the Valet Tray a much more premium feel. In the video description down below, I'll link to the cork material that I used, but another idea would be to also just use felt. Felt's another great option for these kinds of trays and organizers, and it also gives a much nicer feel to the finished product. The next gift idea that we can conquer are these magnetic bookmarks, and you can get a pack of these off of Amazon for pretty cheap, and they're awesome because they just stick together and clamp onto the pages of a book, and I'm sure you know a guy that loves to read. The outer shell material is a paper-like material, and of course on the inside you've got those magnets, so the outside makes it a perfect candidate for UV printing. To make sure that these were good and stuck to the EufyMake print bed, I just took some masking tape, folded it back on top of itself to create almost like a double-sided tape, and the magnetic bookmarks will stick directly down on top of those. And I'm going to be producing 4 of these in one shot. Within the EufyMake Studio software, we can grab a snapshot of those 4 magnetic bookmarks, and we can start to import our graphics. Now I grabbed a few of these graphics online. Some of them I massaged ever so slightly to fit in a slim vertical orientation of the magnetic bookmark. But again, right within the software, you can also use the text tool, and you can place a custom message on there, and you don't even have to use any sort of third-party image editing software. All of the files that I brought in were vector format files, and I would highly recommend that you try and get your images into vector format if you can, and that's just because as you scale them up or down, the quality of the image is much better than using a raster image. Plus with vectors, as you had seen in this example, I can directly edit the color right within EufyMake software, whereas if again it was a raster image, I'd be stuck with the colors that I had already imported. And you can see with the click of a button how easy it is to customize these bookmarks, and that text and those logos are not coming off. That UV ink is very durable. And don't forget that you're also not even limited to vector logos and graphics. You could import a full color image, perhaps a photograph, like a family photograph or pictures of your kids, whatever is meaningful for that person, and you could print that in full color directly on top of these magnetic bookmarks. For our 8th gift idea, we've got custom headphone stands. So you might know a guy who is very much into music, or perhaps he's into gaming, and he's got a really amazing set of headphones that he cherishes and maybe even wants to show off a little bit. He can proudly put them on display with a 3D printed headphone stand, and there are tons of these available on MakerWorld and Printables. I'll link to this particular one in the video description down below. But sticking with the theme of personalizing these things, again, right in the slicer, we can grab our text tool. We can put some text down on the print bed, perhaps again a name. Maybe if he's a gamer, you can put his gamer tag on it, and you can embed that right into the 3D print, and this is going to show up on the headphone stand. So now it goes from a free download to a one-off unique piece. And with this print, you'll see that I've created the text in a different color than the rest of the model. So of course, this is going to require a printer that is capable of multicolor printing. And for this, again, I'm using the Creality K2+. But if you're working on a bit of a tighter budget and you're looking for a more entry-level multicolor machine, I might suggest the Creality High. I happen to have a full walkthrough and review video on the Creality High, and I'll put a link to that in the top right-hand corner of the screen right now. After this print finished and I've gone ahead and removed all of the support material, you can see on the back, the gamer tag here is very clear, crisp, and legible. There's a nice contrast between the black text and the red body, and there's absolutely no color bleed between those two different colors. This print was also one solid piece with no hardware and no assembly required. It's just print in place and ready to go. And I just generally really like this design, and perhaps you might know someone who would like it too. Moving on, I've got something for guys who like to man the grill, and this is a 7-in-1 barbecue spatula tool. Think of it like the Swiss Army knife of barbecue tools. It has some pretty clever features built in, and I'll put a link to it in the video description down below. But the main thing here is that it has a wooden handle, and that's going to make it perfect for engraving. Now, unfortunately, there's no information on the package about what type of wood the handle is made from. So in xTool Creative Space, I had selected the 3mm cherry wood plywood presets because the handle does have a little bit of a red color to it, and I felt that this would be suitable. I went ahead and imported this graphic that I had pieced together from a few different designs that I had found on the internet. And in my power and speed settings, I'm going to deviate from the xTool preset settings just a little bit. So I'm going to be using the blue light laser, but in the advanced settings, I'm going to set the engrave angle to 45 degrees, and I'm going to enable the crosshatch feature. These are somewhat new options that you have access to in xTool Creative Space. So if you do have the F1 Ultra, I would recommend giving them a try, because what I find that they tend to do is actually make the engraving a little bit darker. With some experimentation, I found this to be the case with wood, as well as other materials where sometimes it's difficult to get a darker engrave, such as even metals like brass. And in the case of this handle, I thought it also worked out really well. The engraving turned out dark enough to be read very easily. It's deep, so it's never going to rub off. And all of the edges are very sharp and crisp with no signs of charring, despite the F1 Ultra not having air assist because it's a galvo laser. Overall, a job well done. Time to crack open a cold one to celebrate. And finally, maybe you know a distinguished gentleman who enjoys a fine glass of whiskey, or a father who really requires a stiff drink after all of those years of dealing with you. Whichever one it is, a nice custom set of whiskey glasses is a classic gift, and even if you only have a blue diode laser, we can still engrave glass with a few simple tricks. But first we need to get the whiskey glass set up in the F1 Ultra, and for that I've got this fixture. It's similar to a V-block fixture, but it's adjustable and it comes with two different tabs. So the first one is that small one. So if you have a cylindrical glass, you can set it up and the top surface of the glass is going to be parallel with the work surface. But if you have a tapered glass, you can use the taller tab and you can adjust it in and out on those slots. And that's going to push the base of the glass up or down so that the top surface that you want to engrave on is parallel with the work surface. I can check to see if my glass is level with the RA2 bubble level holder, which you can also find on my website. And it looks close enough, so it seems like we've got this thing set up properly. And you may have also noticed that this glass is not perfectly cylindrical. The base of the glass almost tapers down to a rectangular shape, but the V-shaped fixture still holds it in the center perfectly. And I really like these particular glasses because they're very heavy. The package says that they're made from real crystal glass, and they're very pleasing to hold because of that unique shape. Of course, I'll put a link to those in the video description down below so you can find these exact whiskey glasses. Now for the settings, I'm going to have a full video on glass engraving coming up. We're going to go into great detail on how to get the best results depending on the type of glass. But for crystal glass, I find on the F1 Ultra with the blue laser and using this black laser marking paper, you want to go with something around 50% power, around 220 millimeters per second, and a lower lines per centimeter at 140. And the key to getting a nice consistent engraving on these crystal glasses is the very even application of that black laser marking paper. You want it to be as smooth as possible. And you can see I've applied some to the bottom of the glass as well, and the fixture holds the glass upright like this, so you can also engrave something on the bottom. Perhaps you want to brand it with a logo if you're selling something like this for your business. These will surely make a great gift, and I'll just add another disclaimer in here that I'm not selling these with these trademarked logos. I just figured some whiskey brands would make a great demonstration for these whiskey glasses. You can customize these glasses any which way you like, and just one more reminder, I do have that in-depth glass engraving video coming up, where I'll be covering engraving different types of glass as well as using different coatings to mark it with a blue laser. You won't want to miss it. That's it for this video. Hope you guys found those ideas inspiring. And if you're looking for any of the materials or machines used, check the links in the video description down below. If you guys are looking for any of the custom tools or fixtures that I use to create some of these projects, you're gonna find those on my website, embracemaking.com, and visiting my website is a great way to help support this channel. Another great way to support this channel is to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next upcoming video. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you soon.